This is Patrick Smith, broadcasting my pirate signal from inside the walls of the witch house, from those rails and rafters that belong to me. Well, it's an open question what the topic is today. Let me be frank. These past few weeks in particular, have been a marathon. I read a book recently, The Demon King. And it featured an army, a fantasy army, but an army nonetheless, that engaged in an ill-advised adventure into a neighboring country and found themselves stranded deep in enemy territory, undefeated as of yet, but with no hope, and them being in a full retreat against tens of thousands of native and militarized enemy between them and anything like safety in the middle of winter. It describes the men who marched and how the only ones that stayed alive were the ones who never lost faith in the fact that they would reach the other side, who never believed for a single instant that they would not reach home. Anything less than that, and they would die. They would simply die. Well, I'm not going to die. I have faith in my world, and I have faith in myself. Strange as that is to apply to these terms. COVID, SJWs, identity politics, all of it. The wave broke. You know? And now, here we are in the aftermath, trying not to get killed before the human society of the world can get their shit together and get things started again. Every day there's a little more hope than there was the day before, but there's not a lot of hope. They say more people die in the aftermath of a battle than actually die in the battle. Well, welcome to the aftermath. I hope you survive. I hope we all survive. We've earned it. Every last one of us. And we're not all going to get it. It is a hard thing to tell someone that they're not going to get something that they've earned, that they deserve. But that's just the way of the world, you know? Nothing you can do about it. Isn't that a sad truth? I'm very afraid because all of the skills that I mastered getting this far are now useless. My life is in danger of ending because it's cold. However, on the upside, I'm actually doing a lot of work recovering from trauma. It's unfortunate that the reason that is because I'm so close to being traumatized myself by the desperation and fear of these current days. It's really the fear that's the worst. Fear like it's almost a physical presence. Fear like it's ice water. Like it's some kind of a drug that keeps being administered. Fear so bad that you would almost rather kill yourself than continue to endure it. But you continue to endure it. Because you're stupid. We're all stupid. That's why we're alive. We're too goddamn dumb to know when to quit. Well, I don't know, man. I don't know. I wish I could tell you it's going to be okay. It's not. Everything's a mess. Everything will remain a mess. We'll dig ourselves out of here the same way that we dug ourselves into it. One goddamn brick at a time. We'll walk back all those miles that we grabbed. It ain't going to be easy. I want to talk about the idea of amnesty, because I do believe that amnesty is a good principle in these times, specifically. I'm not making a generalized statement. But I believe that things have been so crazy that it's difficult to determine who was acting out of necessity and who was acting out of maliciousness. There are lots of people who did terrible things because they had to do terrible things. I don't believe those people should be punished in the same way of those who did terrible things because they had the ability to do terrible things. It's a touchy distinction to make, to be fair, but one worth making. So, my current policy on the matter, when I hear about somebody who was an SJW and was awful, I say give them amnesty for recent crimes until they reoffend. And the moment that they reoffend, the moment that they do any kind of bullshit, crappy SJW, peddling, thieving, whatever, then you hold them responsible for everything. But honestly, as it stands, our justice system is not properly equipped to handle all of the criminals that our society now employs in critical services. I'm literally saying that if you put all the child molesters in jail, I don't think society could continue to function. That's how many child molesters there are. And frankly, some of those are just people who were unable to avoid the trauma, what the trauma drove them to do. How do we tell the difference? That's actually really easy. We tell them not to reoffend, and we look the other way, temporarily, as an emergency measure. We look the other way until they reoffend, or until the justice system is more or less in place and we can actually do a fair accounting. But I do literally believe that there are people walking on the earth who had no opportunity to not be child molesters. People who were so desperately abused that was the only way that they could actually remain sane. I don't know how to deal with those individuals, quite frankly. It's a thorny issue. I suggest we don't deal with it at this time. There are troubles enough for what we already have to do. Believe me, let's not add to them. It's hard to believe in the future. What do I believe? I believe I'm going to meet a nice girl. I really do. I think that's my happy ending. I really want a happy ending. I'm not satisfied with this life. It lacks aesthetically. So I want a happy ending, and that happy ending better involve a pleasant few decades spent with a wife. Somebody who I can love. That's all. And, who loves me in return. I'd feel bad if it was a one-way street. Someone who knows beauty. Someone who I can get along with. Jesus. Let me ask you this, man, when you're listening to this. When was the last time you ran into somebody you could really get along with? You don't have to lie. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to bullshit. Someone who just likes you for being you. I aim at a time when that happens all the time. I believe. How ironic in this dark hour to find myself a man of faith. And yet, a man of faith is what I am. I watch a lot of logic videos. I find that amusing and instructive, really. There are a lot of people who are very, very lost on the subject. I believe logic is one of them. I believe logic is essentially, he is performing religion with science. Now, what I mean by that is that there are several commonalities among religions in every culture if you look at their place in society. If you look at the way that they talk, the way that they think, the way that they treat their own ideas, there's a respect for the sacred, for example. Now, what the sacred is varies wildly, but it's always a veneration of the sacred. And what is logic's skepticism? It's a veneration of the sacred. To him, logic, rationality, reason, science, those are the things that he holds as sacred. And I think that his relationship to his sacred values is almost identical to his relationship to the Christians' relationship to their sacred values. I respect logic because logic goes after very bad arguers, very bad faith players in general. He goes after people who are spreading toxic misinformation. But I think he treats them with a blanket contempt, not seeing why someone would be religious. And honestly, if he can't come to that conclusion, if he can't understand why a person would practice religion, I really feel like he's not competent to comment on it. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not making that as a general statement. I'm not saying that unless you can understand child molestation, you shouldn't be allowed to comment on it. However, religion is something that is practiced by, approximately 1/6 of the human population? And I mean like in an official capacity, and I'm probably underselling it. It's probably closer to 2/3. Now, if you're telling me that a practice that is engaged in by something like 2/3 of the human population, if you're telling me that you can't understand that practice, no, I think there's something wrong with you. And yes, a lot of people do it badly. A lot of people do it wrong. I think the snake handlers who believed so strongly in the Bible that they actually got snakes, dangerous poisonous snakes, and would dance with them, relying on the power of the Lord to protect them. I understand that, and I see that as a definite ritualistic observance of faith, I guess. But it's something that is too far unless you are really in dire straits. I mean, that's something that I expect to come out of a war-torn culture. That's where you would see those kinds of rituals, and they would have a place, honestly, in inspiring people who are desperate. I assume that we'll see that kind of stuff happening now. I don't know how I feel about that, frankly. I feel bad, basically. I feel bad, but I recognize the necessity. So, channel updates? There are no channel updates. Indeed, there is no channel.